July 9th, 1892. Dear Martha, last night, while I was in the tub, I could hear Miss Millman talking to Daniel. She said, "I'm happy you came here, Daniel. I'm glad Theodosia has a cousin like you. It's good to have family." He said, "I'm glad I have a cousin like her. I thought I was all alone, but now I can read and write some." By the time I dried off and changed into the clothes Miss Millman had gathered for me, Daniel was sitting beside her, reading aloud. I listened at the door, unseen. He read, "Teddy and I poled and rowed the boat up the river. He camped on the riverbank." She said, "Just like Tom and Huck." Daniel said, "That's what Teddy said." "Who are Tom and Huck again?" Miss Millman laughed. They are two kids from the book Tom Sawyer. I was reading it to the kids on the wagon train. Hearing her say that reminded me of how much I missed our wagon train school. That evening, as the sun was going down, we walked along the seashore and picked up shells. It was hard to imagine that this is the same ocean we saw on the 4th of July in Jacksonville. We found lots of colorful shells. Did you know that tiny little sea creatures used to live in the shells? We found starfish, sand dollars, even coral. Daniel found some colorful frosty pieces that weren't shells. Miss Millman said, "That's sea glass. See? Hold it up to the light." Unfortunately, some people throw bottles in the ocean. Those bottles can be a real danger because they almost end up getting broken. The sea tosses the bits of broken glass to and from in the waves and on the sand. After a while, it smooths the edges and frosts it up that it no longer looks like grass. Daniel said, "They're pretty. Would you like to have them?" Miss Millman said, "I'll add them to my collection of sea glass." "Thank you, Daniel." Yesterday we went to the fort of St. Augustine. Miss Millman's friend, Mr. John Mickelson, took us and was our tour guide. Miss Millman said, "I've just moved here, remember?" Mr. Mickelson knows all about the fort and he was kind enough to agree to take us on a tour. Mr. Mickelson is handsome. He's tall with dark brown hair and big brown eyes. He showed us all around the fort. He said, "Teddy, did you know that St. Augustine is the oldest continuously occupied European established city in the United States?" I said, "Yes, I did. Wasn't it built by the Spanish?" He said, "Yes, in 1565. The architecture called it Spanish Colonial." We walked to the Castillo de San Marcos, an enormous Spanish star fort. Mr. Mickelson pointed to the walls and said, "Look carefully at this material." We ran our hands over the stones. Daniel said, "It looks like shells are in it." Mr. Mickelson said, "That's right. This is called coquina. It's kind of like limestone, but it's made up of ancient shells that have bonded together. Coquina is rather soft when it comes to building materials, so the enemy's cannonballs would embed themselves in the wall rather than punching holes through the wall. The star shape of the fort also helped protect them from cannon fire. We also invited the oldest wooden schoolhouse built sometime before 1716. Mr. Wilkinson said, "Kids, I'd like you to see Mrs. Millman's first school." Miss Millman said, "Tee hee, very funny. Are you trying to say I'm an old maid?" Mr. Wilkinson said, "On the contrary, Miss Casey Millman, I may be trying to say you found the fountain of youth." "Martha, I think they were flirting." "Tomorrow we're going swimming in the Atlantic Ocean. Love, Teddy." July 10th, 1892. Dear Martha, trouble seems to find me no matter where I hide. Today, Miss Millman took Daniel and me swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, right near the water's edge where tiny little houses called cabanas made of cloth. You rent a cabana for the day for a quarter, and that's where you change into your bathing costume. Daniel and I don't own bathing costumes, so Miss Millman borrowed some for us. We rented a bright red striped cabana and took turns changing. When it was my turn, I took off my neck pouch and hid it under my clothes. I almost forgotten that I was wearing it, but I'm glad I remembered because it has Pop's land deed and his father's watch in it. I think seawater would have ruined them for sure. I opened the pouch to make sure everything was there. The land deed, the silver dollar given to me by John Philip Sosa, and Pop's watch that was given to him by his father. For some reason, I opened the watch. On the inside was a picture of Pop's mother, Isabel, and an inscription. It said, "To my beloved Dalton, I love you more than the stars are bright, more than the moon is round, more than the ocean is deep. Isabel." I realized for the first time that Pop's mother must have given the watch to Pop's father. It would have been a long time ago, maybe 30 years, maybe around the time Althea Tomlinson's husband would have given her the gold bracelet. That reminded me. I took off the gold bracelet so I could put it in the pouch with my other treasures. I held it in my fingertips. I had found the bracelet in the springs. It was a treasure. It showed me how when I search for something and don't give up, I might come across something good. I thought about Althea Tomlinson. It had been her treasure too. But I didn't want to think about that, so I dropped the bracelet in a neck pouch, pulled the strings tight, and hid the pouch under my clothes again. Swimming in the Atlantic Ocean was incredible fun. The beach was filled with people all having a good time. We looked stylish in our swimming clothes, and I felt proud about that because that's what just about everyone wore. Miss Melman showed us how to jump up high, get on top of a wave, and ride in it, all the way to the shore. When we were hungry, we bought hot dogs and lemonade. A man and a woman were making saltwater taffy to sell. They made the candy in an enormous copper kettle. After they let it cool for a bit, they gathered it all up together on a marble slab and began pulling it back and forth with their hands. The brownish candy began to get lighter and lighter. When they got finished, it was completely white. That's when they added colorings and stripes. They finally cut it and wrapped the pieces in wax paper. The whole process was fascinating. I wish I'd had that job. When we got back to the cabana late in the afternoon, we changed and put on our regular clothes. We were tired, a little sunburned, but very happy. When Miss Melman went to tip the cabana porter, he said, "Did your husband get his things too?" Miss Melman smiled and said, "You must have me mixed up with someone else." The porter said, "No, ma'am, I don't think so. Didn't you and the children have the last cabana there, the red one?" "Well, your husband came early and asked if you could change too. He pointed to the kids on the beach and said you were his family." We looked at each other puzzled. "Was someone playing a trick?" Miss Melman said, "Excuse me, sir. What did this man look like?" He said, "I didn't pay much attention to his looks. He was in a hurry. Oh, I do remember a scar he had right here." He pointed to the area between his eyebrow and his ears. At the word scar, my hands flew to the pouch around my neck. I loosened the strings and looked inside. The land deed was missing. Oh, Martha, what a disaster. Love, Teddy. July 11th, 1892. Dear Martha, I know my letters seem filled with ups and downs, but I want you to know what's going on. The land deed is gone, and there's no use in wondering who took it. The only person who could have stolen it is Jimbo dead. Just the thought of that man makes my skin crawl. Miss Melman questioned the cabana porter. Jimbo had showed up at the beach and had stood in the shade searching for us. When he finally found us, he came to see the cabana porter. That was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 hours before we discovered it was gone. I felt like crying. Daniel said, "We are going to get it back, Teddy. I promise you that." Miss Melman found a policeman and reported the theft. Then she said, "We need a plan, but first we need full bellies. You can't think as well on an empty stomach." It was true. We were hungrier than an army. When we got back to our cottage, I volunteered Daniel and me to make supper while Miss Melman went to get Mr. Locuson. "He will know what to do," she said. After supper, we had a meeting. Mr. Locuson said, "Teddy, this is a terrible thing that has happened, but if it got me an invitation to supper, it might not be that bad. Thank you and Daniel for a delicious meal. Mr. Locuson has a gift for looking on the bright side." Miss Melman said, "Teddy's mama taught her how to cook. She's the woman I told you about, John, the woman who taught me to cook." Miss Melman called him John. Not Mr. Locuson, but John. John. Mr. Locuson said, "Where do you think this Jimbo Dud will go, Teddy?" I said, "He wants the land deed so he can claim Pop's land as his own. I heard him discussing it with his wife, Verna." Daniel said, "She is one disgusting excuse for a woman, let me tell you. She's a worthless piece of shingle rot that would steal your clothes and try to sell them back to you." Mr. Locuson smiled. "So you're saying you're not too fond of her, Daniel?" Daniel smiled back. "She's a nasty-tempered, kid-whipping, tobacco-splitting scalawag is what she is, and her cooking is even worse." We laughed. Mr. Locuson said, "Well put, Daniel. You do have a way with words." I said, "Jimbo and Verna talked about going to file that land deed. They said no one would know that Jimbo is not my pop, Dalton Bodain." Miss Melman said, "That would have to be in Dade City. That's where deed states your father's land is located. I'm so glad you let me have a look at it." Mr. Locuson said, The county seat of Dade County is Juneau. They moved it in '88, I said. Then that's where I'll have to go. I don't know where Pop and Mama are. They may already be down there, or they may be back up in Gainesville and who knows what quarantine station, or they may be, I didn't want to say the word, dead out loud. But if Jimbo's going down to Juneau to try to file the deed, then I've got to get there and tell those people that he isn't Dalton Bodain. Miss Melman said, Teddy, could you wait till the 1st of August? I could go with you then. Mr. Locuson said, and I have to leave on business to Tallahassee tomorrow morning. If you could wait until the end of next week, I can go with you. I said, thank you for your offers, but I can't wait. Miss Melman studied my face. Of course you're right, dear. Let's see if we can come up with the fastest way to get you to Juneau. She got her map of Florida and spread it out on the table. The four of us put our heads together and studied the map. Love, Teddy.